Welcome, everybody. I'm Jane Barrett, founder of the Career Farm, and I want to thank you for joining us today as Larry and Robert will introduce you to the Future of Capitalism competition. But firstly, some housekeeping. The session is being recorded, and you will be sent a link to the recording after the event. And I will be keeping an eye on the Q&A with Robert, and we'll have questions at the end, which I'll moderate. So, Larry Sullivan is a serial tech entrepreneur and founder of Leo Lion Limited, with a track record of building and scaling software companies across the UK, USA, Poland, and Russia. He champions a culture of diversity, fairness, integrity, and innovation across all his ventures. Beyond business, Larry is deeply committed to education and social impact, having co-founding Stepping Stones School, the Widad Centre, and Pathways Education, as well as launching social enterprises like the Cookie Bar. Through the Leo Lion Foundation, he supports global initiatives that link economic and social value, while Leo Lion Limited actively incubates and invests in purpose-driven ventures across tech, health, AI, and green innovation. Robert Brown has spent 32 years as a CEO of global software companies. During his career, he's always focused on building companies with a value-based culture and strong social conscience. In his most recent tenure as CEO of Construction Industry Solutions, COINS, he was able to meld commercial success alongside working with Leo Lion Foundation to provide both commercial acumen and financial support to charities and social enterprises who are addressing issues of social and/or economic injustice. Beyond his executive roles, Robert is a passionate believer in promoting capitalism with a social conscience. In his opinion, capitalism is the only proven economic system, but capitalism without a social conscience places wealth in the hands of fewer and fewer people, which can have a detrimental effect on society. If all organisations were to set aside time and money to address areas of social and economic disadvantage, many of the world's most pressing issues around education, healthcare and housing could be addressed to create a more sustainable society for us all. So I'd now like to hand over to Larry.
Okay, hi everybody. Welcome from, I'm guessing from all over the world. This is the third year of our Future of Capitalism competition that Robert and I conjured up after we built and successfully sold probably our largest tech company 3 years ago. Retirement was never for me. In all of my ventures, it's a case of values first, value second. I'm not sure if I always thought that when I was younger, because it's actually hard building companies, and you have to be very focused on making sure that a company is a success. I always use the phrase, profit is a matter of opinion, cash is a matter of fact, and it's hard building a business. So I think last year we had something like 500 entries for the competition, 9 finalists, which we do in conjunction with Warwick Business School. Leo Lion, I've got about 10 companies now structured in the same manner. What I do, and I'm effectively the private equity funder of those companies. Well, I am the private equity funder of those companies. But I then put 20% of the equity into the foundation. Then all I really need to build a tech company is really 3 capabilities. One, I need a domain expert, somebody who understands the space. Secondly, I need a lead developer, super smart technical guy. And thirdly, I need a sales contracts guy, somebody who can engage a client. So in structuring those private equity companies, backed by me private equity companies, from the outset, we've got shared values, common purpose, common goal. Echoing the words that Jane just said, capitalism is better than any of the other forms of trying to create wealth. However, it does concentrate too much wealth and power in the hands of too few people. So it does become in the enlightened self-interest of people like me to try and redistribute that wealth but in a considered manner. I really wished I'd met someone like me when I was in my early 30s. I'd just been a lot more successful, a lot quicker, and I could have got onto the important stuff sooner. And that's using, the skills and the relative wealth to solve some of the pressing social problems that we have. So anyway, about 10 companies now structured like that. I also invest all over the world. I'm very much a globalist. We've got investments in the UK, a lot across the United States, which is much more entrepreneurial than the UK and Europe. Israel. We've also got investments in Bangladesh and Japan. So very much a globalist. And we're actually looking for an opportunity or two in China. It would probably be via Hong Kong. And in making those investments, it's always a case of looking at the leader, look at the leader, and look at the leader. And I'll ask the question: is this a moral man or a moral woman? What's their purpose? Why are they doing what they're doing? I'll give you one example. I went quite big in humanoid robots, a company called Aptronic a couple of years ago in Austin, Texas. But really, the founder had me at hello. When I first met him, I can do this as I'm an old chap. He was sort of mid-30s, and I asked him what he wanted to do when he was grown up, and his response was, "I want to do what you do, Larry." And I said, "What do you think I do?" He said, "I think you build successful tech businesses and use some of that excess to solve pressing social problems." The second thing he showed me was his kitchen, actually, and that was because he'd stocked it with health foods, and he was showing me that he looked after his staff. You don't need to be aggressive and nasty to be successful in business. The complete opposite. You have to care about the outcomes for others. So all of my organizations are structured like that, and I'll look for that in companies that we're investing in. And Jeff was showing me that he was caring about the outcomes for others in terms of his staff. Now, on the QR codes here, you can find a lot more about Leo Lion. You can find out a lot more about the foundation. We've been doing good stuff for a long time now. And we think carefully about the NGOs that we support, and we stay with them for a long time. But we also create a lot of our own stuff, particularly around special needs education. I mean, I often say the quality of any society is measured by the care it takes of its least privileged members. And I think anyone with any form of excess, intellectual excess, strength excess, wealth excess, has that absolute obligation to help others who are perhaps less fortunate. It's a good way to lead your life. So look, I'll shut up there and pass over to Robert, except to say well done for being here, and good luck to all of you with your ventures. Really important quality is not only the good idea, but as I said, the core values, but also never underestimate the importance of resilience and, never giving up. Even if the first venture doesn't work, what can you learn from that to make the second potential venture and the third potential venture better? For me, I started my first business at 30 years old, and it was the best thing I ever did. I think that's enough, Robert. I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Could you move the slides on, Jane, please? Larry mentioned about the Line Company and the Leo Line Foundation. There are a couple more QR codes here. You'll all have this presentation at the end anyway, which will link you straight into the Leo Line investment and the Leo Line companies that Larry has spoken about. So should get all the information you need on the background to those at that particular website. Thank you very much. If you can move on, Jane, that'd be great. So there's already been a few questions in the Q&A, most of which are going to be answered during the course of the presentation. I'll take the questions at the end in case they haven't been answered. But one of the questions that was asked in the Q&A already was, who can enter? Well, here you go. You can enter the competition if you are pre-seed, whether you're at seed level or whether you're at Series A. The only thing I would say is if you are at Series A funding, we would definitely normally co-invest in a funding round. We don't typically, through this competition, be a lead funder. For those of you that have tried to raise funds, you'll know that normally you have somebody who is acting as your lead funder. So if you have any expectation of us doing that through the competition, I would advise you to make that clear in any application you make, because it's unlikely that we would do that Series A. Whereas if something's pre-seed and seed, we would probably consider, making an investment as a sole investor. But we do prefer to work alongside other investors as we move forward. If you can move on one, Jane, that'd be great. Thank you. So in terms of the tech types, there's a huge list here, and I'm not going to mention every one of those, but have a good look at them. You can tell from myself and Larry's backgrounds that we have spent the vast majority of our careers in technology, and particularly, software technology. So most of the things that we will invest in, and most of the things that will probably get through to the final will have some serious software component involved in them. One exception might be something like robotics, where it might be more 50-50. There might be 50% of the solution mechanical and 50% of the solution as software of some shape, form or other. But in each of these instances, you can see that there would be a heavy reliance on software technology. So again, there's a list there. Pay attention to the list when you're entering the competition, and if you hit one of those sweet spots, you'll obviously increase your chances of getting through to the final. Thank you, Jane. As the competition states, there is up to $1 million available to a winner of the competition. But just to make it clear, and this has happened so far in the first few years, we've ended up splitting that $1 million investment across multiple entrants to the competition. And therefore, it might be that you apply for the whole $1 million, and it might be that we offer you a component of that $1 million. Having said that, you could be lucky enough to be the sole selected winner from the finalist and be good enough to get the whole $1 million. So just again, bear that in mind as you are entering the competition. There are different terms and different forms of investment that we are prepared to enter into with regard to the winners of the competition. So, there's not a set way that we say we have to do this or we have to do that. We tend to sit down with whoever the finalists are that have been selected as the winners and agree something which would meet both their requirements and our requirements, so that hopefully we get a very successful partnership going forward with any investments that we are making. Thank you, Jane. I guess this is the most important bit in terms of your chances of getting through to the final of the Future of Capitalism. There's an online platform where the application form is situated. There are links further in the presentation that will take you to the competition website, but it's pretty obvious. It's the Future of Capitalism competition. There's several things highlighted in red there, and I do want to emphasize those things. In order to be successful in terms of getting through to the shortlist of finalists, it's absolutely imperative that you submit a business plan, an introduction video, and I know that we've been asked a few questions, not necessarily today, but over the course of competition with regard to the video. This is just something as simple as you sitting in front of your laptop or even on your mobile phone and recording an introduction to yourself and your company, just to give us an insight into you as an individual and you pitching your company in your own words. That helps us judge the individuals behind any of the applications and makes it easier to shortlist people, given that we get probably in the region of 450, 500 applications, and it's not possible to have a pre-discussion with any of the applicants. So I would advise you to use that video advisedly to sell both yourself and your opportunity, as it forms a vital part of our selection procedure. You'll also be requested to put in a pitch deck. So, you know, a slideshow explaining how you pitch yourself and your company. And another piece of information, if you've had previous funding rounds, it would be advisable for you to mention those previous funding rounds and what the status is of your relationship with your previous funders. We've put this in as something new this year because in previous years we found that sometimes people haven't disclosed that they've had previous funding, and it just makes the funding decision more difficult should those people get through to the final, because there would be things like term sheets in place, previous business plans, previous relationships. And given that we have a lot of relationships with people, again, it will help your cause if you disclose those details prior to potentially getting through to the final, as we can have a conversation with you about it in advance of any funding being made. So those are the really, really core things that are required. There are a few other things on the application form. You know, in particular, your application must be made in English. I apologize for that, but you know, it's very, very difficult for all our judges to be competent in the many, many languages that exist in the world. And we got last year, I think there were entries from 58 countries around the world. So it would be very untenable in the timeframes that we have to judge the entries to either get those translated or do anything else with them. If you require an NDA, there are standard NDAs available through the competition website, and the deadline for submission of your application is the 26th of September 2025. So if you have any more questions on that, put them in the Q&A and we'll take them at the end. You can move on there, Jane, please, if that's okay. We've just got a full competition timeline for you here now. Applications are open now, so the competition's live on the Future of Capitalism website. I've already just mentioned that the application deadline is the 26th of September, so make sure you get your application completed by then. We will announce the shortlist in early December 2025. It'll probably be in the first week, certainly the first 2 weeks of December. And the final, which we call the pitch day, is on the 3rd of February, which I'm going to talk about on the next slide. So those are the key dates that you need to get in your diaries if you really want to pursue an entry in the competition. Thank you, Jane. So coming on to the pitch day itself, 3rd of February 2026, we hold it at the Warwick Business School, which is based in the Shard in London. It's a very spectacular venue. I don't think I've met anybody yet that's not been impressed with the venue. You've got fantastic views looking over the skyline of central London. There are expenses and travel support available for those of you that you know, maybe need you know, some help if you're very, very early stage and you need some financial support to attend this type of event. There are 10 judges for those of you that successfully make it through to the final. This is a little bit like a Dragon's Den, except there are 10 judges. So on the pitch day, you'll come along, you'll have 15 minutes to make your pitch to the judges. There will be 5 minutes of Q&A at the end, and the judges will base their decision entirely on that 20-minute interaction with the finalists. Following the judging, which takes place between about 8:30 in the morning and 5:30 in the afternoon, there is an evening reception at the Shard, which generally goes on until about 9 o'clock in the evening. And during the course of that reception, we make an announcement as to who has been successful in the competition and who we therefore want to enter into more detailed negotiations with regards to a funding round. Thank you, Jane. I think we're nearly there. One final thing that I always want to emphasize, Larry did his pitch at the beginning here, so you'll get a very, very good insight, or should have got a good insight into the things that we're looking for. But, we're looking to find values-led tech startups that want to make both a commercial and a social impact. Now, I always put this on the slide here, that can be by just using your business acumen and business profits, hopefully, as you become successful to support social causes, or it can be through providing a technology that could positively impact the lives of people. That could be educational technology, it could be sustainability technology, it could be healthcare technology of some type. And it could be one or both of those things. But I do want to emphasize it because this is our twist on our competition, that we don't just want to find people that can be commercially successful, but we want to find people, moreover, who are willing to share their success in some way, shape, or form with broader society to make a difference in the world, other than just generating economic wealth. So I think that's it, Jane, from me, other than any Q&A. So I think if you want to move it on.
Yeah.
I noticed that we've got a few questions.
We do. Yeah, we've got quite a few questions. Great. Actually, there's a couple of areas which I'm not sure if they were on the slide, but have come up as questions. Climate tech. Have you done anything in I presume that's also climate tech. I've not heard of that. Climate tech.
Yeah, climate tech's okay, Jane. Yeah, I mean, as long as it's I say as long as it's a software component to that climate tech. We don't tend to. You can still try and enter, by the way, but we don't tend to follow, if you like, hardware type solutions to addressing climate tech. Clever devices and things, but enter the competition because you never know.
Yeah, yeah. And well, similarly, there was another question around health tech and med tech. Presumably it's the same answer.
Yeah, it's the same answer. It's a slightly bigger stretch for us, but we obviously do have some healthcare investments through the Leo Lion companies. It depends how close they are to our sweet spot in terms of our understanding, our judges' understanding of the solutions that are being put forward.
And the judges are on the website, aren't they?
Yes, they are. All the judges are listed on the website.
If someone's made a correction, sorry, if someone's made their application, they want to go back and make a correction, can they do that if they've already submitted?
I'm not entirely sure how the technology addresses that, but if they do want to make a correction before the deadline, if they can't make it directly through the application technology, just email. Use the info email on the website and say that you'd like to refine your application, and we'll probably just delete the original application and allow them to post a second one through.
Perfect. Larry, have you ever invested in Africa, Nigeria? If yes, is there a pattern to the companies you've invested in?
Yeah, we invested in Stitch Money in South Africa. It was only a small investment, but and Jan Lamus will know more detail about it. But I think we've actually had our initial investment money back, and we're still rolling there. We've had about 4 or 5 times return on that. And there's some good entrepreneurial activity in Africa. I mean, I'd like to see more. I mean, if anything, I think I would have a slight bias to investing in companies that and countries and areas that we haven't yet invested in. So very, very much a global approach, and through the foundation we've made a lot of investments in principally via Habitat for Humanity and Peace, promoting equality in African secondary education. We funded lots of lots of schools in Uganda and Zambia mainly. I've just actually funded a program to look at them operating also in Ghana. But no, very, very, very much so. And in my early days when I set up in places like Poland and Russia, countries coming out of a challenging period are really quite interesting places. Some of the best entrepreneurs that I came across in the early 90s came out of Poland. you know, so
Yeah.
not so much out of the increasingly the comfortable West. Again, America is still pretty entrepreneurial, but
Well,
yes, I mean we would welcome that. Yeah.
thank you. Do you fund solo founders?
Yes, we do. Although I would say if you're putting in an application as a individual person, I think you would need quite a compelling story around the additional people, and particularly the skills that you might need to scale your business. Because obviously, one of the things that we we look at is the quality of the overall management team. But listen, as long as you understand what the challenges are and the type of people that you maybe need to fill out your team and have got some sort of plan or connection to do that, there's no reason that the application won't be considered as seriously as any of the other applications.
I'd add to that something I've used. I bore people with this, but all I've done over the years, I build teams, and I've used something for many years called Belbin team profiling. So just type in belbin.co.uk or belbin.com, and when you're building teams, and that particular aid will tell every individual their primary role, their secondary role, and how they plan the team. It will show strengths and allowable weaknesses. So I've also used it to personalized conflict. But you don't, although I've always been I've been the lead entrepreneur in most of my organizations. I couldn't have built those companies without people like Robert and many other people. So in the end, to build a successful team, the leadership team, the top leadership team is 5 people probably, 4 or 5 people. So I'm not saying do it alone, but always, when you've got some good ideas, always make sure you can run them against people who can sort of test them and challenge them. I have to be careful sometimes. In my younger years, I used to use ready, typical entrepreneur, ready, fire, aim. So I'd start something and I'm up to my elbows in alligators and it's too embarrassing not to sort it out. But I learned to slow myself down a bit, and I'll quote to you Winnie the Pooh as a philosopher. I had this idea inside my head that was very thingy whilst it was inside my head, but when I put it outside my head for other people to have a look at, it wasn't so thingy. So the idea is you refine that. I mean, you guys now have got lots of aids to help you. I mean, ChatGPT can actually help you refine an idea and develop an idea as well. But solo's hard. You can do it, but you really need some trusted people to test your ideas with.
Thank
you. Robert, you've been looking at some of the Q&A, I can tell. So
yeah.
When do you want to jump in?
Sorry. There's a few questions here. There's somebody asking the pre-MVP, but they've got some early potential customers to try a MVP product. Of course, you could enter. I mean, you're probably a semi-ideal stage to enter the competition. We don't mind catching people at a very early stage. So have a go and see how you get on. You've got to put yourself out there to be successful. And as I say, in the UK, you've got to be in it to win it. So but there's absolutely no reason.
I was going to jump in and just ask you, presumably there's no requirement, one of the questions, to be registered in the UK.
No,
not
at all. No, I was going to come on to that because there's several questions later on.
There are
on about that.
I'm picking up here one. I couldn't see any health tech, med tech on there. I just found the Q&A on the list. I've invested very recently in some interest in health tech around preventative medicine. A company called Neurable. It's neurologist, second generation Mexican migrant out of Boston, and it just through these wearables, it just checks your brain waves, and from your brain waves can show your brain health, can show your cognitive ability. It shows you when your peak times for working and when you should actually take a rest. Another one called Paradromics, which is BCI, a brain computer interface. So you know, it sounds dramatic stuff, and it is. It's revolutionary stuff. But you know, someone who's lost speech, for example, can start to imagine speech in a part of his head, and it can digitize speech. It can also, you can also have you know, prosthetic limbs, and it can start to control movement on those. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that we're doing around preventive medicine. They're all there if you look at the websites and stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, one for you, Robert. You want to pick one out there?
Yeah, there's Anna's asked a question on here about a ski clothing company. Anna, I think it would be, being very honest with you, a very, very long stretch that we'd invest in a ski clothing. I understand what you're saying about the tech, but I think it'd be that would be a very, very long stretch. Would that one? But you know, if you fancy putting an application in, by all means do so. But it'd generally be difficult, I think. I think Jane's answered all those questions. Listen, you can be based anywhere in the world. Your company can be incorporated anywhere in the world. You know, we don't define you know, the regions or countries or areas where people can apply and where their companies are registered, etc. So you know, all of those questions around that topic, just don't worry about it.
Well, another question from a different Anna regarding impact, environmental impacts valued as well as social.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, brilliant. And how many startups will be selected for funding?
Well, in the previous 2 years, I think there were 2 in the first year and 3 last year. So out of the 9 finalists in each of those years, there was 2 in the first year, 3 in the second year.
Okay. With respect to technologies, would your preference be for new technology inventions, or would you also consider the use of existing technologies applied in novel ways?
Definitely the latter. You know, what you tend to find in the world today is, you know, there are very, very few things that are what you would consider to be an absolute invention that nobody's ever thought about it before. They tend to be just doing something in a better way. And Larry always talks about, you know, building a better mousetrap. You know, which is what most technology does. So, you know, if you've used technology to build a better mousetrap, as we would say, absolutely, it's, you know, say that you'll very, very rarely come across something that you think, oh, I've never seen that done before in any way, shape, or form.
Well, a couple of steers from me, guys, is that all technology does is one of two things. It's a compliance play, okay? So it's the avoidance of a negative consequence. One of my most successful investments in the UK was anti-money laundering software. And I invested very, very early stage. In fact, it was just an idea. I remember the young man running it, Charlie, what would I say, Charlie Dellenpole. I was a judge at a competition that he won at Sussex University. He just approached me after the competition, said he had this idea, anti-money laundering software, very much values driven. I mean, London is still one of the biggest money laundering centres in the world. Money flows like water from where there's weak property law to where there's strong property law. A bit more legislation's coming in, and you know, compliance is important. The leaders of those banks will not want to get caught out and have big fines or possibly even worse. So compliance plays the biggest driver for technological change, the avoidance of a negative consequence. And I mean, Charlie, when I invested in that company, Charlie valued his idea at £3 million. And I laughed, first of all. So and I just said to him, so Charlie, you're valuing your idea at £3 million. He looked me straight in the eye and said, yes. And I backed the man, backed the man, and backed the man. I was his largest angel investor. They hit a valuation, last time I checked, about 6 months ago, 960 million. So they're heading for £1 billion valuation. The only other thing that technology does, it creates value by compressing time, really. So you look at business performance increases and, you know, you apply so what. This was how it was done with previous technology, and this is how it's done with the newer technology. And how does that create value for the, you know, potential client that's using it? So I think, you know, a lot of times it's not about flipping to an answer, it's what's the right questions to be asking before you get to an answer.
Yeah.
Jane, there's a question there. Sorry for jumping in.
No, go for it.
About quantum engineering. Yes,
Mm.
of course, you can enter the competition. You might need to explain your solution very, very clearly. Not that we don't have a basic understanding of what quantum engineering is, but yeah, make sure that you try and get as much of it in layman's language as you possibly can, because it is a highly complex and challenging area for many people to get their heads around is quantum.
Yeah, I'd also say with those things, Robert, they've got to think about the simple things like who's your customer, who's going to buy it, what's your marketplace, what's the competition, all of those things. So, and the first people you've got to convince before you convince anybody else is yourselves that you've got something plausible and defendable. Because if you chat to Robert and I, we will, and a lot of our judges, we will find kindly challenge, but often it's pretty straightforward. So you don't want to shoot people down, but it's pretty straightforward to challenge the things that are being missed. So if you've got a good idea, say kick it around with people that you respect, knock it into shape, and the first people you got to convince that is really compelling is yourself, and then you will be convincing to others.
Actually, that brings me to a question from Max. Will the list of judges be made available prior to the competition? Are they all up right now?
There's we're waiting for 2 or 3 people to confirm. I think there's 6 of the 9 judges that have confirmed that are currently on the website, and the other 3 judges will be, certainly going up in the next couple of months. So a long time before you even probably finish your application, you'll know who all the 9 judges are in the competition. Jane, Michael Yoon asked the question up there, and I think, Michael, if you want a very straightforward answer to that question, you asked the question, value-based is a broad term. When we're talking about value, we're talking about the values of the people in the organization, and how they manage and run the organization, not the value that will be created. I don't know whether to interpret your question as because you said, how do you quantify value? And a value to us, for example, in the way we talk about it, just to give you an example, not to say it's any more important than anything else, would be integrity. Not how much something costs or etc. So when we're talking about values-based businesses, we're talking about businesses with good people, with a good moral compass, with good business values, and not necessarily the value that they're creating in pound dollar terms as individuals. But if you want to put in a more specific question, I'll do my best to answer it if that hasn't answered it already. I'll hand back to you, Jane.
Yeah. Thank you. So we've got a question around equity. How much do you take at pre-seed? So like 5 to 10%, or seed like 15 to 25%. Can you give us some idea on that?
The answer is no. It depends on the stage of the business, how much we invest, the mutually agreed valuation of the business, et cetera, et cetera. So it's almost impossible to say, but until we understand the business and the business plan and how much we're prepared to invest and have agreed a valuation for the business with the people submitting the application.
And I guess the funding process is a similar thing. You don't know; it's an individual decision.
It is. It's individual by company.
And just on the due diligence side, what are you looking for there?
Well, look, we do very light due diligence compared to full due diligence, but we'd obviously have a good look at the financial projections of the business and the financial history of the business, assuming it's been a business. If it's a very, very new startup, there might be nothing much there from history. So in that case, we obviously pay more attention to the future financials. We'll obviously have a look at the product and the solution to make sure that we agree with the size of the market and the market projections. We'll have discussions with the founders of the business, because as Larry says, the principle of back the person, back the person, back the person. We need to make sure that we have a good understanding and feeling for the people in the business, and can develop a good, ongoing relationship with the individuals in the business. Those are sort of the main things, if you like. There's obviously some legal due diligence that goes around. Do the people actually, if it's a business that exists, do the people actually own the business? Do they have the rights to sell shares in the business? If they claim to have, patents or copyrights or whatever it is, we would check all the legals on that. We would check the ownership of the IP, if there was any IP. To make sure that it hadn't been taken from somebody next door, let's say. But yeah, it's very light compared to full private equity and venture capital due diligence, but we obviously do all the sensible things that you should do when making any investment in a business.
Sure. And do the startups need to be revenue generating? Larry, do you want to answer that?
So what was the question again?
Do they need to be revenue generating, the startups you invest in?
Well, eventually, because otherwise it's not a business.
No, I mean when they actually make the application.
No, like the thing I just said earlier with regard to Charlie and Comply Advantage, it was an idea, and it was simply an idea. He valued his idea at £3 million. As I say, when he did that, I laughed, and it was so cheeky. But he was a very convincing, compelling, values-based young man. He already had a successful venture, but no, I mean it was pre-anything. It was literally just an idea.
And that still stands. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And what other strategic support might be available to the companies you invest in?
Certainly, the companies we invest in, we give them quite a lot of strategic support. There's obviously they have access to myself and Larry. As for questions mainly, and little piece of advice. But there are people behind the scenes in Leo Lion that can be do more slightly more detailed work. I mean, just again to give a few examples, even some of the finalists from previous years, contact me periodically and ask me, people that didn't win, they got to the final but didn't win, and ask me questions, and and maybe want to network with some of the people. We're always prepared to do that type of thing for people, if they ask in the right way, and are genuinely moving their business forward positively. So yeah, there's a fair bit of strategic support, and I think the other thing I'd say about the strategic support, not being disrespectful to, or not meaning to be disrespectful to, venture capitalists and private equity organisations, we do give support from a different perspective, in that most of the people within Leo Lion are ex-operators, as I would call. We have actually run businesses, grown businesses, taking new products to market. So, all the advice is coming from an operational angle rather than just purely from a top-down strategic viewpoint of the marketplace. But yeah, people.
Yeah, I'd add to that, Robert. It's interesting because I now am a private equity funder, but I've never taken any private equity in any of my companies ever. I've either started them with my own money, or I started them from nothing and built them on a solid platform. I didn't get rich quickly. I got rich quite slowly. I think you build good things of value over time. And to the point of previous winners, next month I'm actually in Boston meeting Dance, who were the winners 2 years ago of that competition. So there's follow-up. I know one of our judges is a non-exec on the board there. So I mean, we're a pretty experienced bunch of guys, and we've done some good stuff. So if not us, there's a whole host of people around us that you can get access to. And if you guys haven't seen it already, you can probably, if you just go onto YouTube, Google Future of Capitalism, then put under it Paul Collier, Larry Sullivan, Jeremy Hunt. What we did last year's event with Robert emceeing it very well, I'm going to say again, Robert. Paul Collier is an Oxford economist. He wrote The Future of Capitalism, Bottom Billion, How Africa Got Left Behind. His latest book is around the left behind places in the UK. Jeremy Hunt is former Chancellor of the Exchequer and Foreign Secretary, and myself. So we answer questions on the future of capitalism from a academic perspective, a political perspective, and a business commercial one. So if you haven't found that on YouTube, do find that. And but part of it is you've got to have the resilience and the determination to go and get whatever help you need. I mean, what you do have to do is walk through brick walls and be determined and be resilient and be persistent, as well as having, a pretty good idea that can stand up to scrutiny.
Yeah, good. We do have a question about, can you put in more than one application?
Yeah, you can put in more than one application.
Okay.
Sorry, Robert.
That's okay.
Were there any that I've seen you been reading them, Robert. Are there any that you wanted to pick out, or shall I just carry on?
Yeah, well, I think we've answered 90% of them.
I think we have. Yeah, I think
well,
we have.
not 90% of 99% of them.
Yeah.
I see that Lucky at the bottom there has asked about, would we fund a band? Highly unlikely, Lucky, that we would fund a band. There's normally got to be some technology involved in the competition, but good luck with your venture, and I hope that your band becomes very successful, and maybe if it does, we maybe should have invested and didn't.
And presumably there's no conflict if a startup is participating in any kind of governmental grant program in Europe.
No, I mean, you can be in the middle of a fundraise, whether that be, governmental, private, or otherwise, and just see this as another component of the whole funding strategy of the business.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think some of these have been answered, things like agricultural development in Africa.
Yeah.
You've already said it's really software development mainly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just quickly looking through these. I think you've got somebody applying to actually come and work for you guys.
Well, if they want to submit an application via the Leoline website, if there's an opening, we will consider it.
There you go.
I always say to people, the first thing you have to do is just ask. I mean, just ask with any questions, and you've got to be bold. And sometimes, there's no such thing as, well, there is such thing as rejection, obviously, but even when things go wrong, they should just be treated as learning experiences. As long as they don't kill you, they're just learning experiences and teaching you how to do something better or differently the next time.
Thank you. If I've missed your question, and it hasn't been answered, please just pop it in the Q&A. We've just had one from George saying, is a platform cooperative, would you fund a platform cooperative? I'm not quite sure what that means, but
it depends, George, what you mean by a platform cooperative. Again, if there's an element of technology involved, if you've invented a clever technology platform to manage a cooperative that you think you could sell to other people, then absolutely. But if you are just running some sort of intermediary venture where you are redistributing other people's products or something like that, then probably not. Again, very difficult to answer. I mean, enter the competition if you want a definitive answer, but it's unlikely unless you've got a piece of technology in there.
I think you've already answered the question about how many startups will be selected for funding.
Yeah.
And are there any benefits to applying early?
Oh yeah, no, I did see that one, Jane. I'm glad you reminded me about that one. Listen, if you're confident about your venture and confident about its viability, then there can be advantages to submitting early, because it's a double-edged sword, is that by submitting early, when maybe not too many other applications are being reviewed at the same time, you might get more face time people spending a bit more time looking at the application. The downside, of course, is if your application is not very good, it might get dismissed very, very quickly. So there is and there isn't great benefit. All the applications will be looked at following the end date of the submission of applications. But you can imagine when the judging panel have 2 or 3 weeks to review 450 applications, assuming they all came in on the final day, there might not be quite as much time to spend on each one of them as there would be if they came in drip fed over a course of 3 or 4 months. So it can be a double-edged sword.
I think you said, is it 12 that are selected for pitching on the final pitch day?
We do between sort of 8 and 10, ideally, not 12. But
right, sorry. Yeah,
we sometimes if there's a few that are not necessarily on, if there's a few that it's very, very difficult to distinguish between, we might increase up to a maximum of we have done 12 in the past, but it's a big stretch on the day to do 12. But if there were some that were very, very, very compelling and we couldn't differentiate them from others, then we might expand from say 9 to 12 on the day.
Thank you for writing your questions, because maybe it's not clear, but who reviews the submitted applications? Is it you basically send them out to all the judges?
No, we have a pre-judging panel to actually narrow down the applications, and the pre-judging panel is made up of 20 or 30 people, ideally, not always. Sometimes we have significantly fewer than that, but the idea is to because there are 450 to review, we have to spread the load across quite a broad range of people. And what happens in that process, just if people want to know, we'll narrow down from let's say 450 to 100, and then we'll narrow down from 100, let's say, to 30, and then we'll narrow down from 30 down to the final 9 or 10. And what happens is, as the process as the number become less and less and less, the final selection of the final 30 get reviewed by everybody. So initially the 450, let's say, to 100, will just get reviewed by individual people, but then as they get closer and closer to the final 9, they'll end up being reviewed by everybody that's on the pre-judging panel, to make sure that we get the best balanced judgment of the applications to select the finalists.
Right. You're smiling, Larry. Have you read something you want to answer?
Oh, I've just learned that I can scroll up and down to see the rest of the questions.
Just scroll right down to the bottom, because I've asked people to put...
No, I like this one. Would it just be dumb money, or would there be
Oh yeah, no, yes, I did answer that one.
No, we're just dumb money. I like that one. Look, guys, I also say just because something is serious doesn't mean it can't be fun. So I'm not disrespecting that question. Someone asked if they could meet me if we're in London at the same time, and I would say, if you're determined enough, okay, and you find a way to do it. Yeah.
I think on the changing your application, we might need to come back to you on that. Like if you've made that application and then someone said, there've been updates that you want to put in a little bit later. I think we talked about that right at the beginning, didn't we, Robert?
Yeah, just
not quite sure whether
I don't think the technology allows you to withdraw an application, but if you message if you just message the info email address on the competition website, we can cancel the original one, and then you'll be able to submit another one.
Yeah.
Look, I think we're just about getting
I think
up. Yeah, could I just add? Look, starting a business is one of the best things I ever did, it's the best way to express yourself. We're in a rapidly changing world. The impacts of the digital revolution is going to be bigger than the impacts of the industrial revolution. I still think the world is absolutely pregnant with opportunity. With smart young things, and lots of tools out there now to to help you. And like when I started my business, I never planned particularly to be wealthy. I just plan to avoid not being poor and to look after the people I loved. And like I said earlier, with any form of excess goes with it a responsibility to do something decent. And that's actually what we're trying to do here. But starting your own business is hard. And you need to not only have a good idea, you need to be sure that you really want to do it, absolutely suck up the responsibility to make it work. You need resilience and determination and hard work. I mean, those things are just a given. That's what you need to do. Robert, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think those are the core ones, Larry.
Yes.
And a lot of, I mean, you've said it in other words, but you need to be absolutely focused. When you're running the business, to be successful, in my experience. But yeah, resilience, determination, and hard work, I think sums it up, Larry.
Mm-hmm.
Good place to start. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Robert. And we will send out a recording of this once it's done, so you'll get that.
Good luck. Good luck to you all out there, and well done for being here. Okay, good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.